And I live in Charlotte. I like Greenfield much better. But I was
Reminds me.
Good morning. Nope, nobody went on vacation this summer. They're all here. It's a big crowd. Mike Allen has our invocation and pledge.
I'm actually going to start with the Rotary moment. And I gave it a little bit of thought. And I was thinking, one of the things in life that we are able to do is to share, big and small. And I think that's also true in Rotary. I think of like Happy Dollars, of course, we get to share good news and other news. On a small end of sharing, I remember sending an email out to the group asking for recommendations on tailors and getting within minutes about 25 different people. So we get to share to get recommendations. And on the other end of the spectrum, the more meaningful aspect, I thought of a moment when one of our fellow Rotarians, Dennis Sneed, was grieving the loss of his son. And I was struck by how long the line was and how many Rotarians, how many of us were there waiting to share that moment and share grief with him to try to help him through what is a time when that people shouldn't just have to go through. So my Rotary moment really is about allowing us the opportunity to share. Let us bow our heads. Lord, thank you for the opportunity through life and through Rotary to share. Big moments and small, good times and bad. Thank you for allowing us to try to use those opportunities in sharing to help others and help our communities. Please let us recognize that this is not only a privilege, but it's also an obligation. Thank you for allowing us to share this food this morning. In your name we pray. Join me in the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Of the things we think, say, and do.
Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Rachel Meisterberg, you have our Sergeant at Arms.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So we have actually several guests this morning. Chip Person. You already want to introduce
He was a
your
member. John Dawson is visiting with me again tonight.
Thank you.
Hopefully the process is processing.
All right, everybody pay attention. That's what I was looking for. Mark Reynolds, you want to introduce your guest?
My son Carson's back with us. He's on his way to his last film practice for CPBA.
Jim Kennedy.
Tony Rollins is in the house.
Bobby has a guest as well.
Tommy Richardson, my perpetual guest. We're going to make you all wait forever. It's a secret whether we're really going to get in.
Tony has a guest.
Yeah, this is my friend John Moser, the only non-repeat guest, it seems. It's more first time. John moved here from Chicago with his wife and 2 sons about 3 years ago. He is interested in Rotary. He should know all about Rotary because his father is a Rotarian in Michigan. John's originally from Michigan, graduated from Indiana, University of Indiana, Bloomington, in accounting as a CPA, and worked for BF Jeanswear here in town as a supply chain controller.
And Dan Quinn has a guest as well.
Mark Moser is our speaker. I'll introduce him in just a bit.
Very good. And then we also have a visitor from Greensboro Club, and excuse me, Dan Ashby. Carl, I'm sorry. I can't read my own handwriting. I apologize. Thanks, guys.
Birthdays and anniversaries together.
All right, we have 2 this week. I have for the birthdays, is Don Towery, which was on 7/18 this week.
50, baby.
Anniversaries, we've got Kim and Gail Williams, on 16.
Hey, if Don's birthday is today, it's the 18th, we gotta sing happy birthday.
You gotta start it, Chris. Chris has to start it. Oh.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday, dear Don. Happy birthday to you.
Now my favorite part of the program, Buster, how about some happy dollars? Pin up demand.
John, I'm kind of embarrassed. I don't know exactly what you do, but I know it has something to do with quality control because you got a red pen in your pocket. And I've got always. Does it good quality control going on, or you just a red pen guy? Differentiate. All right. Dang.
So BB&T announced record earnings this morning. You'll see it in the paper. And for the first time ever, my department was the first thing they mentioned in that. That can either be good or bad. But we had 35% growth quarter over quarter, so that's good. Generally, Chip will probably tell you this. When that happens, our stock usually goes down.
Well, my son came home from California, he brought his girlfriend, we went to the beach for the week, and we didn't run her off, so that was good. He's going back. And then I want to thank Guy Robondo for letting me do some pouring for him. Thank you. There we go.
I've got two happy dollars here. My father turned 90 the week before last. We had a big birthday party for him, and he's doing great. I called him Tuesday. He plays golf a couple days a week, goes to the Y several days a week. He's worn out a lot of treadmills over there at Spears. He said, "How did you play?" He said, "Well, we played an easy course." He played Bel Air, I think it's Pleasant Ridge. He said, "It's wide open, and we played the senior tees." I said, "What'd you shoot?" Shot 74. 90 years old. I don't care what course you play. 74. My other happy dollar is right after changing the guard, my wife left me. She came back.
Which is happy.
Anyway, she spent 10 days in Europe with our daughter who was over there in summer school, and they had a great time, and I spent 10 quality days with our 3 dogs.
Dan, you're right here.
Well, I'm going to I have to leave a little bit early. I've got to go up to the Bechtel Summit Boy Scout Jamboree this morning. That'll be an interesting experience. They located it at a huge complex, and they'll have all kinds of fun stuff for kids.
I have lots of singles because I was singles and only had a 20 and 18 singles.
all white too,
First happy doll. Last week I mentioned about my nephew of 14 who come from the Netherlands and visit us for a month. That was really scary. He was only 14 and had to fly by himself and change planes in Newark. He was supposed to arrive last night. The good news was he showed up at Windsor Airport. We didn't get lost in New York or something. Second happy dollar, talking about flying. I'm happy for myself because I haven't been on a plane for 6 weeks straight. I've been like 6 times Europe, 1 time China already. Really enjoy having the summer.
I think that's horrible. Yeah. It's good. I know, but you
Well, I was sad to miss the changing of the guard. That weekend was the last chance I had to spend along with the son, who's at the Great Lakes Training Facility up in Chicago with the Navy. So we got 4 days for the last 4 years. And he gets 15 minutes, he gets one phone call 15 minutes a week. They pack up all the stuff, they put it in a box, and they send it to you. If they didn't tell me, I thought he would have been dead. But I packed some postcards, self-addressed, with a little stamp on them, and he goes, "What are these?"
It's not a happy dollar, but you know, we should watch this airline stocks. If you haven't flown for 6 weeks, later today, I head up to Virginia. Tomorrow, I'll fulfill one of my bucket list items, going to be racing Ariel Adams at VIR.
In those shorts, man, that ought to be impressive. You put a suit on? Do you have to wear a suit or a helmet?
Oh, yeah, a fire suit.
Shoes, suit, gloves, and helmet, right?
I guess there's enough I can do a happy dog. I was talking about his wife being out of town, and our old neighborhood usually gets together at my godmother's house, has a pool, and she's not doing real well now. She's in a nursing home, and so Bobby called me up, so we all get together for the 4th of July, and I said, well, we don't really have any plans right now. He said, well, come on over to my house and fish and all, and it was real late planned to go. So we rig up a pole or two, and first cast Bobby throws and catches about an 8-pound bass. The only person that caught anything, the rest of the day. That was fun.
Was that near your house? I saw that picture, that was impressive.
Yeah, that fish is back in there.
Dang.
This is 5. Let me know if it doesn't cover it. 3 continents, 4 countries, 9 states. It's very good to be back. Also, there was Jerry wrote a nice article in the paper on Katie a few weeks ago. I don't think I've covered my dollar for that. I got a lot of letters from the girls in the Tom Key school that we have sponsored. I want to read one of them. These are the 25 young ladies. We paid for all their books, dorm, tuition, everything last year. I got to meet with them this summer, and then as a result, we sent them on a little field trip. There's some notes on their tables as far as what cost that I have committed to. So if you're so inclined, you can send Sylvia a check and just write on the bottom of it, stuff Dan promised. So this young lady says, "Dear family, Dan Quinn, uncles and aunts from Children of Vietnam. My name is Pham Mai Tom. I'm one of the 25 female students of Nguyen Binh Hien Secondary School who are supported the public scholarship from by Gate City Rotary Club. I am writing a letter while waiting for lunch, fried chicken. I am so hungry. Do you know why I am so hungry? The reason is that I had a big trip on this morning. I had gone to a big cinema for a cartoon movie. Then I went to shopping to buy anything I want. She had about $2. Practically, it was the first time for me to these places. You know that my dream is to become a doctor for treating all the poor patients in my country. If I have a chance, I will join in your club because they do meaningful things for poor people. Oh, my food is coming. I have to eat. I want to say thanks to you all. I hope that I will have more trips like this on the next time. Wish to all of you good health and happiness. Thank you so much, Pham Mai Tom." Thank you.
Well, it's been quite a while since I've said anything about a happy dollar. There's usually, up in years past, it's been about every 3 weeks I say something about Teddy. There's 3 in there, and they all meld together. But Teddy, is now about ready to start his 2nd year in School of the Arts in Film in Winston. But the really happy part of it is that we all should be so happy and grateful that we've got Max Kern here because of all the work he does in Guatemala with mission trips. Well, about 5 years ago, one of the reasons that Teddy probably got his eagle at age 15 was this man right here, because he was his mentor in building his project at the Science Center. Max is interested in doing he's doing his mission trips, and he's asked Teddy if Teddy would go along this October, and Teddy, with hopefully permission from all of his professors, will spend the first week working alongside of the team, redoing the condition of the houses, but also doing a documentary that Max can use for 3 or 4 different reasons to promote his mission trips. So this is really a happy dollar for that in advance. So the last part of it, Teddy, fortunately for everybody, dropped his girlfriend that was latching on to him for 3 years in high school. But he also has found a very nice girlfriend that this summer. And the ultimate is, in about 3 weeks, we're going to take him on probably our last trip someplace to Punta in the Dominican Republic for about 5 nights. But there's only one condition. She goes along, so I'll give you an update in about 4 weeks.
This is pretty simple. I borrowed $1 from John last week. There it is, interest to buck.
Well, Grandpappy always used to say, I think it's a great lesson to keep in mind in life. He said, if life gives you lemons, make lemonade. And then find someone who'd like a vodka to and have a party.
Chris Justice has some special announcements. We'll catch up on some awards for those that missed changing of the guard.
All right, guys, so some of you missed our changing of the guard, and this is our last opportunity to hand out some of the awards that were missed. I'm going to hand out some perfect attendance awards. We had Tom Sears, who the records at least were showing 13 years through the last Rotary year, and then he had perfect attendance this year as well. Vic's here, right? Vic Nussbaum. Yeah. Perfect attendance for this year. Congratulations. Is Langdon here today? Charles Langdon? Let's see him today. Okay, so he had perfect attendance. Pete Gursky, perfect attendance. Had him last year. Bill Meltzer, I had her 7 years through 2012, and then perfect attendance this year as well. Tom Nelson here today?
Yeah.
Yeah, there he is. Had 4 years through 2012, and perfect attendance this year as well. Hey guys, hang on to these plaques. The game plan is you'll see these little discs on here. If every year that you get perfect attendance, we want to be able to add, an extra disc to your plaque. So we had David Graves had perfect attendance, not here today. Dorothy Downey had her 13 years through 2012, and then perfect attendance this year as well. All right, Blake, I had Blake Hunt, 13 years through 2012, and perfect attendance this year as well.
How could he have perfect attendance? He's not.
Yeah, that guy's never here. How do you get perfect attendance?
Actually, that's really easy. There's now videos, and you can do makeups.
Kelly Harrell showing 10 years through 2012, and perfect attendance 2012. Robbie gets the most ribbing about this, but I'm telling you, of all the people in the club, this guy is the most diligent about makeups that you'll ever see. I mean, he emails me constantly about the makeups. Guys, 23 years through 2011, 2012, and also perfect attendance in 2012. Yep, and Max Kerr, perfect attendance as well. couple of board member awards that, yeah, there they go. I don't think these guys are here today either. We had one for, yeah, Randy Elliott's still out, right? Sarah's not here. All right, so I think that's it for the award wrap up.
Thank you, Chris.
Working contenders shouldn't be hard anymore.
Do we have any announcements from the floor? Danny?
Next Thursday, Louise Courts is with the Guilford County Schools warehouse supply. When, if you have stuff you could donate. She's going to come in to the meeting. She'd like to speak for a minute or two and just describe what, the whole process of, bringing a box to your place of employment, or if you can, bring it to work and have people fill it up, and we'll help supply the kids at Guilford County Schools this year. It's next Thursday, we'll have some boxes handed out.
Great, thank you, Dan. Any other announcements? Our speaker this morning came to us by way of Dan Quinn. It's Mark Moser. Mark spent 14 years in operations, sales, and sales management roles before shifting his focus to human resources and organizational development leadership. He has over 12 years' experience as the senior HR executive in 2 organizations, the Davidson Group Incorporated, an international brand protection services company, and Samet Corporation, a multi-division general contractor and real estate development firm. Mark specializes in strategic HR for small and medium-sized firms, helping them ensure that their HR processes are compliant and aligned with the company's strength. Mark is also an adjunct instructor in the management department of the Bryan School of Business at UNC Greensboro. Mark earned his BA from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and his MBA from the Darla Moore School of Business at the University of South Carolina. It's one of my alma maters as well. He holds an SPHR accreditation from the Society of Human Resource Management and a CPBA certification from the Target Training International TTI assessments. Mark is active in his community and serves on the board of the Volunteer Center of Greensboro. Welcome, Mark.
I'd like to thank Dan for the invitation. Known Dan Quinn a long time, as you guys do. He's a quality individual, and appreciate the opportunity to be here today. A mentor of mine, John Whitley, was CEO of the Stereotech when I joined that firm a long time ago, and he's now retired. But he liked to tell this story, and I think it's pretty telling. He said that he's from South Africa, so picture Gary Player when I tell you this story. If you're a golf fan, you know who Gary Player is. He looks a bit like Gary, sounds a lot like Gary. And he was living in South Africa where he's from, and he flew, he was promoted to be the president of U.S. operations for an international firm based in Europe. So he came to the U.S., and not long after he got here, he had to go to Pittsburgh to meet his boss, who happened to be from London. So the guy from London, the guy from South Africa, sitting in a restaurant in Pittsburgh. And the boss in London asked John a question. He said, "What is the most important aspect of growing a business?" And John, without blinking, said, "You've got to have the right people, without a doubt." And the Londoner said, "Wrong. You're wrong, John. You have to have the right strategy. Having the right strategy is key." And John kind of shook his head and loved to tell the story, because to this day he's convinced that he gave the right answer and the Londoner was wrong. John didn't stay with that company very long. As you can imagine, the culture, he wasn't aligned with the culture, I guess, and so he left, took a couple years to form Stereotech, and then after hiring guys like me, I'll say, we kicked that company's butt, and they really weren't even seen much. By the time I left that industry, they were almost a non-player. We dominated them. So that was John's approach. A guy named James Fisher wrote a book called Navigating the Growth Curve, and if you're into those kind of things, it's an excellent read. He talks about this very topic in depth, but he sort of positions it a little bit differently. He doesn't see it as a competition between strategy and people. He sees companies throughout the entrepreneurial growth curve having three focuses, and those focuses are people, process, and profits. And he looks at companies not based on their revenue, top-line revenue, but really the entrepreneurial growth curve is based on number of people. And it's funny, I talk to financial planners and different types of businesses, and they go, well, we kind of focus on companies between 5 and 25 million, or we focus on companies that are 25 million and above. Fisher would say, from a culture standpoint, that number is not really relevant. And I'll give you an example. I was head of HR for the Stereotech Group in Charlotte. We were we had operations throughout the U.S. and Canada. We had 700 employees when I left there, and we did $70 million worth of business. I came to Samet Corporation in 2007, and we did $180 million worth of business with 120 people. So, it just it's just really how you leverage those people, how much work is subcontracted, things like that matter. So Stereotech, with our 700 people and only $70 million worth of revenue, was much farther along culturally than Samet. Samet still had a lot of the challenges that a company with 120 employees would have. They haven't gone through the issues that a 700 employee company's been through. So we had to deal with those at Samet as we went through our growth, and that was a fun time for sure. Here's what Fisher says: that your strategy as you're ramping up your organization, and the top line is people count, from 1 to 10, you're just trying to make sure you're profitable, and that's the number one focus. Now, that doesn't mean people and process aren't important, but achieving profitability at that level of the ramp up is certainly important. When you get to 20 employees, suddenly people becomes the most important of the three. None of the three become unimportant, but people becomes number one, and that's because at 20, the entrepreneur can't do everything him or herself. They start relying on supervisor or some type of a operations person or something, or a salesperson, somebody to really help them in a way that maybe when they had 6 employees, they were doing most of the work and they had 6 helpers. So you can see at that point people become really important. It pops back up later. So these things change, and I found it to be a compelling read, and I recommend it to you if you're an entrepreneur. But the punchline for this presentation, I think, is that employee engagement has a positive return on investment. If you invest your time and your efforts in making sure that you have an engaged workforce, that will come back to you. You just have to make wise investments, just like anything else in business. All right, so you can see people changes throughout the growth cycle. All right. The other thing that I've seen study after study that shows that employee engagement not only has a positive return, but it is a leading indicator. Engagement comes first. You don't become profitable and then have or be best in class, first in class in your industry in profitability, and then start to try to build an engaged workforce. Generally, the companies that are leading their industries in profitability also are leading their generally are leading their industries in financial performance or in employee engagement as well. All right, let's talk about the roots of disengagement, because this is an interesting time. 2013 is an interesting time in business. Most of you remember this very well. In March of 2007, unemployment rate was 4.4% in the U.S. There was a war on talent. We had to really do a lot to go out and compete and try to find the best people. It was really difficult to hire during that time. Try to find really good people. It was really challenging. And bang, by October of 2009, unemployment was 10%. And during that time, lots and lots of people, maybe some people in this room, lost their jobs. And employers in this room had to make some really hard decisions when the economy went south during that period of time. Here's another interesting graph that shows you how quickly the job losses mounted. This is the worst of it happened between October of '08 and spring of '09, you can see the job losses were horrendous. And even these gains in 10 were mostly around the census. There wasn't really any, all that happened was the losses, the rate of losses slowed down, but we certainly didn't get back into positive territory for quite a while. It's slowly been ticking back downward since that time. 4 years later, we're still at 7.6% unemployment. So it's still quite a bit higher than it was when this whole thing started. The roots of employee disengagement are in here, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a little bit. One of the things I'm hearing from small employers is that they are really scared to death of the Patient Protection Affordability Care Act, the Obamacare, if you will. And so it kind of surprised me, but I talked to them in my business. I talked to a lot of employers that have 30 to 70 employees. And a lot of them are saying, I'm not ever going to get, I shrunk below 50 during this recession. I'm not going to go above 50 again. Whatever I have to do, I'll subcontract, I'll use part-time people, whatever, because I'm scared of Obamacare, and I'm still scared of FMLA and some of these things. And I'll tell you, I think there's enough expertise in Greensboro, a lot of the expertise probably right here in this room, to help you and your small business navigate these two and a couple other burdens, legislative burdens, that I can't imagine that in the long term an employee with a company with 45 employees is going to have a huge competitive advantage over a company with 55 employees in the same space. So I'm, maybe a little bit short-sighted and a little emotional, but at the same time, these are concerns. And I think the most important thing is that the perception by a lot of small business owners is that this is a cap that I don't want to go above because it's going to create a lot of heartache for me. Therefore, I'm going to keep my business below this level. That certainly hurts our ability to get back to full employment for sure. Now, here's another interesting graph. This is a set of numbers put out by SHRM, Society for Human Resource Management, and it's the employee job satisfaction rate. And you'll see that right here in '08 and '09, the winter of '08 and all of '09, job losses were at their absolute highest. That's when companies were shedding people, by the thousands. Hundreds of thousands of people lost their jobs, and small companies were having to make decisions. Do we lay people off? Do we try to keep everybody on board but cut 401k matches and cut out, some insurance programs and other benefits? Do we change our car policy? What do we do to try to keep everybody on board? All that was happening during this time, and yet job satisfaction skyrocketed to probably historic highs. Anybody have any guesses why that might be?
I want my job. It didn't matter.
Right. Doesn't suck so bad after all.
All that's true. And there's a math component to this too, which is if you had 100 employees in 2006 with an 80% job satisfaction rate, and you cut 10% of your workforce in 2009, who did you cut? Probably the people that were the most unhappy, the people that were generally least engaged, least productive. Probably your C players by and large are who you cut. So this survey was taken without C players in a lot of organizations because they'd been cut out. So the combination of a smaller denominator and fewer C players gave us the illusion that, and I think a lot of that was going through, at least I've got a job, this job's not so bad after all, I'm glad to be here. But you'll notice this trend, and we're going to come back to that here in just a minute. One of the interesting things about the recession that we went through and the recovery that we're in compared to historic recessions, if you look back, these gray, and I know you can't see all this, but all these gray areas are recessions. And the blue line represents employment. So you can see going back to the historic recessions, the recession ends and employment bounces back very quickly. Look at this one in the 70s, this one in the 80s, this one in the early 90s. And then all of a sudden, the last two, job growth has been much slower. And this one has been unbelievably slow recovering. Normally, once the economy kind of bounces out of recession, jobs bounce right back. It hasn't happened this time. It really didn't happen that quickly the last time. It was very slow having that recovery. And so that has a real impact on employee engagement. Going back to this graph, everybody was just happy to have a job in 2009, 2010, but everybody was working a job and a half, right? I mean, we got down to bare bones. Everybody's pitching in, particularly in small firms. I'll do what I have to do to keep this thing afloat. Owners dropped back and they started being productive again. In other words, the architect was doing architect work, the civil engineer was doing civil engineering work, where maybe the civil engineer used to manage a team of civil engineers and was more a manager and was thinking about the business more holistically. Can't do that anymore. Now we're doing it. Construction companies, I know owners were being project managers again, that kind of thing. So everybody was wearing a couple of hats. The other thing that happened is that owners had to make really difficult decisions during that time. Who do I keep? Who do I not keep? It was very painful. If you owned a business, I was in the boardroom. We were making those decisions at Samet. What are we going to do? What's the proper response to this? How can we keep our workforce with us, through this? Very difficult decisions. But also what happened was once those decisions were made, once the 401k match was cut, once the health insurance, for families was eliminated, once people were, we cut those jobs and we communicated it and they were on their way, we now, after a year or so, we're at peace with it, and we're just focused on trying to get the business back. But who didn't forget? The guy in the cube beside the guy that he used to go to lunch with who doesn't work there anymore. Or the lady in the cube whose 401k match just got cut from 50 cents on the dollar to 10 cents on the dollar, or maybe it got eliminated altogether. They haven't forgotten. And so they're still, and plus they're doing more, they're working more. They haven't had a raise in 2 or 3 years, some of them, or if they have, it's been very small. So while they were all gung-ho in 2009, now we're starting to approach, again, with no C players, we're starting to approach levels that we saw before the recession. So now your A and B players have really the same level of engagement that your entire organization had prior to the economy going down. So my word of warning to you is that from 2008 to 2012, your A players had very few options. Nobody was hiring. They really couldn't go anywhere even if they were dissatisfied, and certainly they weren't going to storm out in a huff over their 401k match. So they've hunkered down, did what they had to do to feed their families, and they're cruising right along. But their options are changing. Even I think the slow jobs recovery has lulled business owners to sleep to some regard, because there's just not this big competition for talent out there. Unemployment's still at 7.6%, but the ads, if you go to Indeed.com, you're starting to see them. And I'm not a recruiter by any means, but I do some recruiting for some of my clients the way an internal HR person would do recruiting, post jobs, screen resumes, that kind of things. But I have a number of friends who are in the recruiting business, and slowly but surely things are starting to pick up a little bit, and there's a lot more jobs out there than there were, even though the unemployment is dropping so quickly. So you're at risk. You could have an A player sitting on your team right now that is somewhat still dissatisfied about the way you handle it. And the funny thing is, it doesn't matter. We really stressed over whether we were going to cut ancillary costs or we were going to cut people at Samet. And it turns out it doesn't really matter. If you cut costs and kept everybody, that didn't win you any special loyalty. And if you cut C players so that you could keep full benefits and everything else for your A and B players, that didn't really win you anything, because you were seen as disloyal either way. Employees don't always understand what business owners have to think about in their decisions. So that's what you're up against. A players have a lot of options. So what can you do? Let's talk about that. Now, I don't think they're going to be up in arms, and they're not going to come at you that way, but just all of a sudden, you're going to get a letter of resignation from somebody you never expected. Has anybody had that experience in the last, somebody in your company or firm or left that you weren't expecting? You thought they were a teen, lifer or whatever. It's happened. I know of a company where they lost a couple of people. They couldn't believe it. But you never know what's going on down there. So there's a model. Let's talk about what employee engagement is first, and then I'll show you how to combat it. I like the Blessing White model a lot. And Blessing White says that companies have targets, and that's whether it's profitability, whether it's market share, whether it's brand recognition, penetration, whatever. They have their own set of objectives, and then employees have their own set of objectives. So for different employees, and that's what's hard. The company's objectives are fairly clear. Employees' objectives vary a lot. For some people, it's work-life balance. For others, it's they want to make more money, or they're ambitious and want to get promoted. It could be a lot of different things. They want to retire early. They have all these different objectives out of work. And where these two things intersect is the job. So the job and the company, and the company's objectives, the person's objectives all align there. For the company, employees that are closer to the target are more productive. They're helping the company achieve its objectives, and then there are employees that are less productive and aren't quite as important to achieving the objective. For employees, the closer they are to their objectives, if their work-life balance is their goal and they have it, they're happy. If work-life balance is their goal and they don't have it, they're not happy. And so they're on this scale as well. So with regard to employee engagement, you find the really highly engaged people in your organization right up here where their personal goals and the company goals come together. So if you're working for a firm and you love what you do and you're really helping the company achieve its objectives and you're happy with what's going on, then you're a highly engaged employee, can't wait to get to work in the morning. If you're down here and you're not meeting your personal goals and you're really not helping the company get to its goals very well, then you're probably not a particularly engaged employee, and you're sitting in that cube thinking about things other than work. So what do you do? If you're an employer and you're concerned about your A players and the risk that you might have in this economy of A players leaving, what do you do? First thing you have to do is you have to measure a couple of things. One is you have to measure turnover, and I've always been really thorough about the way I measure turnover. And the second thing is you need to measure employee engagement. With turnover, you need to measure it two ways, voluntary and involuntary. Voluntary turnover will tell you something about your employee engagement metric. Involuntary will tell you something about your employee engagement. If you're having to fire a lot of people because they're not performing, then that's a different story than if your A players are leaving because they're being lured away. And when it comes to measuring employee engagement, I really I utilize Frank Reichel's model. This is really for customer engagement or customer satisfaction more so than employee engagement. But I've used the model for employee engagement, and it seems to work really well. For 6 years at Salmon, I gave a survey, and I used their ultimate question in the survey, and I used it to track engagement, and it tracked very similar to what you saw from the national scale. But the ultimate question, if you're not familiar with this, it's the net promoter concept, and I'll go through it really quickly. It's based on Reichel and his group did customer satisfaction surveys, and they looked at all these survey questions, and they were trying to find the 2 or 3 or 4 that really mattered so that they could shorten customer satisfaction surveys, and they found that there was really only one that mattered, so they called it the ultimate question. And that ultimate question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend us to friends, colleagues? So I use the exact same question in employee engagement surveys. On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend us as an employer to your friends, peers? And what they found is if people say 9 or 10, they're promoters. I love I love that business, Belk's. I love Belk's. Oh, you need some new clothes? I recommend you go to Belk's. Great company. Neutrals. Oh, you need some new clothes? There's lots of good stores around here. That's a neutral. Detractor, oh, you need new clothes? Go anywhere but Belk's. Okay, that's a detractor. And so, detractors will take the extra time to talk you out of businesses they don't like. Promoters will take the extra time to try to get you to go to businesses they do like. Neutrals don't care. So if you throw out the neutrals, subtract the detractors from promoters, you get a net promoter score. And the companies, world-class companies like Apple and Four Seasons Hotels, Ritz-Carlton's, have 75%, 80% net promoter scores. And that's a good way to do it. And you've probably gotten surveys where they ask you the ultimate question in the survey. Now, Gallup organization found that they did some studies, and they found there were 2 other questions that were pretty pertinent to employee engagement. One is, I know what is expected of me. So if you're going to do a survey on your own, make sure you include that question. I know what employees that know what's expected of them are much more engaged than those that aren't sure. The second question is, I have what I need to do the job. You know, I have the equipment, the materials. It's very demoralizing to people to have, to need equipment that or have a really bad computer. We implemented a CRM at Summit while I was there, and one of the sales people was just griping about the CRM and how awful it was. And when I went and talked to him about it, it turned out that his computer was like a 1984, and it just couldn't run it. So it took it 12 minutes to boot up the program. We got him a new computer, and suddenly he didn't hate the CRM so much anymore. What are you going to do about it? First, do surveys and measure your engagement, find out where you are. Have some kind of benchmark. And then second, you need to have strategies in place to ensure that you do have improving and better employee engagement. The Great Place to Work Institute, which is the company that publishes the 50 great, 100 best places to work in the U.S. in Forbes or Fortune magazine every year, has a great model. I've been to a couple of their conferences, and we're going to talk about these things in a minute. But a lot of companies think that they can fix it with a picnic. Let's just have a company picnic and everybody will love us. Or we'll do a team building thing, take everybody to the ropes course at UNCG or something. Those are great. Picnics are great. Ropes courses and management weekend things are great. They help, incrementally they help employee engagement. So I'm not bashing those things at all. But if your net promoter score is low for employee engagement, you're not going to fix it with a picnic. You need to have a more integrated strategy for how to raise your employee engagement levels. And the Great Place to Work Institute has this model. The top 3 things in the pie, respect, credibility, and fairness, come from management. They're basically management actions that either increase credibility, increase the perception of fairness, or decrease it. And the bottom 2, pride and camaraderie, have to do with how well they like their coworkers and things like do they participate in community action together. Companies that do community service things like the Human Race. I'm on the board of Volunteer Center. We do the Human Race. There's these corporate teams out there. Bank of America, Deluxe Corporation have these big corporate teams that walk, and you can see that improves the level of engagement of employees that work for those companies. Let me give you when the Great Place to Work Institute, if you were going to nominate your company to be a part of the 50 best places to work in the U.S., they would give you this mammoth survey, and I have a copy of it, and I put, Stereotech went through it. We came that close. But here are some of the questions. For respect, I'm given resources to do my work. Sound familiar? Gallup found the same thing to be appropriate. Management shows appreciation for good work and extra effort. My wife and I have a joke. I told you I loved you the day we got married, and if I change my mind, I'll let you know. She kind of feels like that's insufficient feedback. As employers, we unintentionally do the same thing a lot of times. We woo them and we love them when we're interviewing them and getting them to come to the company, and then we set them up and go, good luck, and then we go and they sink or swim on their own. Credibility. Management makes its expectations clear. Management delivers on its promises. Fairness. I receive a fair share of the profits. Managers avoid playing favorites. Pride. I'm proud to tell others I work here. People look forward to coming to work here. Camaraderie. I can be myself around here. We're all in this together. Those are the kind of survey questions they have. And so if you want to improve employee engagement levels in your company, if you're concerned about it, you should be measuring it anyway. But if you're not, start measuring it. And if you want to see it get better, take a look at these 5 areas and start having a specific, tactical approaches to improving your relationship with your employees in all those areas, and you'll see employee engagement go up. So I'm done, Dano, unless I can open it up to questions.
I just had a comment.
Yeah.
I had a late appointment yesterday over in Archdale, and I went by one of the big companies that's been planted over there for many years. They make those yellow things with wheels on them. Won't call any names, you know what I'm talking about. But I know several people that have worked there and were comfortable riding a chair. They got their planet rocked, and I think that I look at how bad horrible the economy has been the last 4 years, but I also see companies like that have allowed that too comfortable scenario be in place. And I think that's been a good step probably for that, you know.
Yeah, I certainly, I think companies cull a lot of chaff out of their organization is probably a good thing. I'm talking more about that lieutenant that you depend on. It's a critical part of your business that all of a sudden gives his resignation or her resignation.
Oh, yeah.
That's the part that I'm concerned about. I think getting lean and getting mean was good for a lot of companies.
Well, I just, the diligence of the hiring process has got to be important. Because if you don't hire a person with the right personal characteristics, has an underlying dissatisfaction or minor or whatever, that's going to hurt you. And,
No question.
Thank you, Mark. We will, I don't know if it's up here, but we will donate a book on the global school in your honor. If you would, please. All right, raffle. I will. Objectively for our raffle.
One of these three.
One of Dan's last 3 digits are 995. 995.
Incorrect.
You were wrong.